fighting evil portal monsters, avoiding starvation, and selling rabbit poop for money? Wait, what? Today I played the most crazy card-based village building simulator out there. I played 100 Days of Stacklands. My village began with one single villager. Let's call him Jeff. Jeff was a rather talkative villager, but he didn't have anybody to talk with. All he did have was a berry bush, some rocks, a log, and a coin. Little did Jeff know, this was all that he was going to need to start the foundation of the next greatest village. Jeff obviously liked to eat, so he started looking around in some berry bushes as he tried to find food. Well, who would have thought berries from a berry bush? After not letting a single berry go unpicked, Jeff decided to try and hit some rocks. While doing this, he had gotten some stone. It also appeared that coins could be given as offerings to get more card packs. Items in Jeff's world. The only issue was, it costed 3 coins, and we only had 1 coin. So it was decided to sell 1 stone and 1 twig. This would allow us to be able to afford a new card pack. I opened it, and some soil, a berry bush, and a tree appeared into Jeff's world. I dragged a berry directly onto the soil to see what would happen. Before I could, Jeff was complaining that he was hungry, and it was the end of the first moon. So he ate 2 of the berries that he had collected earlier, which were then quickly replaced. In the desire for technological advancement, I gave Jeff a combination of a bunch of different resources. This way I could see what he could do with them. It wasn't long until he started crafting something with 2 wood and 1 stone. I wonder what he could be making. The resources turned into a house. This was definitely a step up for Jeff, as he had to spend his first night sleeping on the forest floor. It also appeared that a new type of card pack became available. This one was called Seeking Wisdom. I'm assuming that this card pack is going to have a whole bunch of great ideas. It became that time again. It was already the end of Moon 2. Luckily enough, we had the perfect amount of food. 2 berries for Jeff and 1 for growing. Jeff was also searching another berry bush where we had gotten 3 more berries. Well, we're pretty set on food for the night. I felt pretty confident with my extra berry, so I ended up selling it for 1 gold coin to invest in a card pack. Just as planned, the berry finished growing in the soil, producing a berry bush before the end of night 3. This was absolutely perfect. I had a little system going where I could have at least 2 berries ready for each day. Jeff, you're in luck. No starvation for you. Well, this really isn't that exciting. Jeff's life really only consisted of sitting in his house and waiting for the berries to grow for the next day. Real quick, if you're enjoying the content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This was a very simple life that didn't require a lot of effort, but Jeff was longing for more. He knew that he wasn't destined to just sit in his house all day and wait for food. It was time to take action. I sold Jeff's house for 3 coins, so that way we could get some new card packs. Don't worry, Jeff, you'll be getting another house sooner or later. From the pack, we got 2 rock resources and an idea card. The idea was a stick, which Jeff already knew how to make, so it really wasn't that valuable. But all of the other resources that we gathered and sold for gold coins were. It was time to buy our very first Seeking Wisdom card pack. It ended up providing us with 2 idea cards, one of them being on how to grow a chicken, and the other on how to craft a shed. I didn't currently have any eggs to grow a chicken, so I sold that idea card. It was a great morning because my berry bush had finally finished growing, and we had also opened up a new card pack. Let's go, another berry bush. Jeff's gonna be in heaven. While one of the berry bushes was being searched, a rabbit had jumped out of it. This rabbit was pretty active, and it was hopping around everywhere. Now that's gonna be a good dinner. Maybe I could use it for something else. Let's hold off on cooking it. We then had enough resources to build a new house. Jeff seemed ecstatic. He wasn't gonna have to sleep on the grass anymore. Coincidence or not, right as the house finished constructing, the rabbit had also pooped. Now you're probably thinking, that's disgusting. But after seeing if Jeff could interact with it, I ended up selling it. And guess what? It sold for 1 coin. This was the best discovery that we made. We could sell the rabbit's poop for gold coins. Jeff, we're gonna be rich. Using some of the coins from the rabbit poop that we had gotten, I was able to buy a new card booster pack. This one provided 2 berry bushes, which meant that we were gonna be set for the next couple of days. Wow, I bet Jeff never would have thought that he'd be selling rabbit dung for a living. Well, that's another coin. It became my goal to keep buying more booster packs in hopes of getting another rabbit. Well, what are the odds? We now had 2 rabbits in our world. That meant that we were going to be getting booster packs a lot quicker now. Without even realizing it, we then had discovered Flint. I tried to give it to Jeff and see if he would interact with it, but unfortunately nothing happened. I then set it aside and started to sell more rabbit droppings. That was when the unspeakable happened. I opened yet another card pack, and a second villager had come out of it. Looks like you got a new friend, Jeff. I'm gonna name you Susan. It was cool and all having 2 villagers now, but unfortunately that meant I was gonna be using double the food. This is gonna be challenging. I'm going to need to produce 2 berry bushes every single day. The only issue is I don't have any more soil, so it's imperative that I open up more card packs and find soil to grow more berry bushes in. Luckily enough, we had scraped together enough food to survive yet another night. I didn't know how long this was going to go for though, especially if we didn't get that soil soon. After selling some more rabbit poop, I had got kind of fed up with them. They were jumping all around the environment and messing up the positioning of my cards. Real quick, my merch is 15% off everything right now. Go check it out, linked down below. I opened yet another Humble Beginnings pack, and then a Seeking Wisdom one. I got really lucky, as an extra card pack had come out of this Seeking Wisdom one. It was called New Weaponry, and every card that came out of it was an idea. I ended up getting the concept of combat, a slingshot, and a magic wand from it. I had also gotten blueprints for a spear from the original card pack that I was opening. I didn't hesitate, as I told Jeff and Susan to start making a spear. I knew that we were going to have to defend ourselves at some point, so we might as well have weaponry. It was pretty awesome because when I had dragged the spear onto Jeff, he had turned into a militia member. If anything funky was going down at the village, he'd be ready for it. I hope he really is ready for it. This very strange portal had just appeared out of nowhere. It seemed like it was ticking down like a time bomb. It was only a matter of time before it would open. Right as it popped, a goblin had jumped out of it. I immediately sent Jeff and Susan to go and fight this goblin as it didn't belong here. I didn't know what or who it wanted, but I needed to keep it away from the berries and coins, as those were our most prized possessions. The goblin held out pretty long considering it was in a 2v1. Once it was taken care of, we had gotten a spiked plank and also the blueprints on how to build one. I honestly wasn't sure what I could do with it, so I dragged it onto Jeff and he became a builder. I then ended up giving him back the spear, and then I gave the spiked plank to Susan. We now had 1 militiaman and a builder. These probably were the 2 most important roles that you could have in a village, besides obviously some kind of gardener. While opening a new Seeking Wisdom pack, I had gotten the idea of a quarry. If constructed and manned by a villager, I would be able to have an unlimited resource of stone. Now that didn't sound like a bad gig, especially when you only need to spend 3 stone and 1 wood to build the quarry. As I opened another pack, I ended up getting something similar to the quarry, but this time it was for wood. I had found a lumberjack camp. As long as I had it built and had someone running it, I would be able to have an unlimited resource of wood. The quarry paired with the lumberjack camp seemed like it was going to be very overpowered. The only thing is, I had to make sure I built them first. One of the rabbits that I had been utilizing to make a lot of money off of had hit my last nerve. It jumped over and hit one of my cards. I don't really know why, but it kind of triggered me. So I had taken out that 1 rabbit and I made sure to leave the other so that way I could keep making some profit. I then opened another card pack. A vicious rat had come right out of it. It was very hostile, so I sent over Susan and Jeff. They had taken care of it, but that was the least of my worries. Another rabbit had come out of that card pack, which meant I had 2 again. I needed to decide if I wanted to keep 2 of them or just have 1, like I was initially planning. Well, let's first find out how much they displace my cards. Then I'll for sure make a decision. Dealing with 2 rabbits was already enough, but when I opened my first Reap and Sow pack, a cow had emerged from it. Well, this was going to be a handful. If all of my cards start getting moved around, I'm not going to be happy. After watching the cow for a little while, I realized that it didn't move around as much as the rabbits did. This made things a little bit more bearable. Sure, it still was moving, but it just didn't seem like it jumped as far. I had accumulated quite a lot of idea cards. I wasn't sure if I needed to hold on to them to keep the recipe for whatever it is that the idea was for. So I just stacked them up and kept them on my board. I was distracted opening up another card pack, and that was when I had realized there was some milk sitting down at the bottom left corner. The cow must have produced this milk. This honestly was exactly what I needed. I couldn't find more soil to grow more berry bushes on, so having a cow that produces milk was a very good substitute. I was faced with a dilemma. As it was the end of the night, I had been informed that I wouldn't be able to hold as many cards as we currently had on deck. So I had to decide to get rid of 2. My initial thoughts were just to buy something with the 2 gold coins that I had. This didn't work out because apparently coins don't count as an item on the board. I ended up getting rid of a stick and then a stone. Another one of those strange portals had also reappeared. Well, here goes nothing. A spooky and scary skeleton had jumped right out of the portal as it popped. Jeff, Susan, engage! I'll just sit here and watch. I'm not trying to get involved with that thing. After going back and forth for a while, the skeleton had finally been defeated. It dropped a wooden shield, as well as the blueprints on how to build a wooden shield. I'm glad that that's dealt with. It's time to get back to civility. I began collecting the materials necessary to build a garden. This way, I wouldn't have to rely on a small patch of soil. I honestly didn't know if the garden was going to provide more output in food, or if it was just going to grow plants at a faster rate. Regardless of the outcome, I would definitely be happy to have either or. Who knows, maybe the garden will even do both. Once it had finished constructing, I had immediately placed a carrot right on top of it. It seemed like things were growing a lot quicker than they were before. I was slowly working away at getting enough coins to buy the Curious Cuisine pack. When I opened it, an egg, berry, and idea card for fruit salad had popped out. None of these seemed particularly useful, so I just kinda went on with my day as if nothing happened. While Susan finished up picking a berry bush, I had unlocked a new card pack. It was called Logic and Reason. I could only imagine what was in there. To be honest, the Curious Cuisine card pack didn't seem like it would really be useful unless you were going to starve the next day. A random transport cart had come out of nowhere and appeared at my village. I tried throwing a lot of different things at it, but it seemed like it was not willing to accept anything, even gold coins. So I kinda just put it in the corner with all of the farm animals and left it be. The rabbits are invading! I had no idea how it happened, but it looked like the rabbits had multiplied. And surprisingly enough, they weren't disturbing my cards that much. However, I didn't want to have to deal with 4 different rabbits hopping around the board. So I sent Jeff in to take care of one. When I said 1, I really meant 2. I didn't really feel good about myself having to send over my militiamen to take out rabbits. My only justification is I didn't want them to eat all of our carrots that we used for food. Talking about invasive species, a strange portal had appeared. I was wrong. There was actually 2 monsters. I guess the rat really isn't a monster, but we'll just go with it. I had never seen a frogman before this point, but wow, he was able to take a lot of damage. It wasn't until Jeff and Susan both focused in on attacking him that we were able to take him out. The frogman had dropped a blowpipe. I equipped it on Susan, and she had also become a part of the militia. The only issue with that is I didn't need another militia member now. A builder was much more important. But next time one of those strange portals appears, I'm going to have Susan use the blowpipe. Surprisingly enough, I had unlocked a new card pack type. This was pretty unexpected. I had never opened up any of the armory card packs, so I thought that I wouldn't be able to progress to the next one. Well, I was wrong. I wanted to introduce some new villagers to this village soon enough. My only concern was that we didn't have enough food to support them. So I started collecting the materials necessary to build yet another garden. Once I had them, I had Susan start constructing the garden. Carrots were the main food that we were rolling with. The second that the garden had finished, I placed a carrot directly into it so we could grow more. That must be quite the diet. Milk and carrots every single day. I was finally starting to collect a surplus of coins. This village honestly owes a huge thank you to the 2 rabbits who are carrying the whole economy on their back. Well, there goes all of the money. We're so close to getting a logic and reason pack though, only 5 more coins. The monsters had it out for us. They knew we were finally going to advance, and they didn't want that to happen. A really powerful portal had appeared, and this time, there were 4 enemies that came out of it. Right when they stepped foot into my village, they started making their way towards Jeff and Susan. It was obvious that their goal was to take them out. I had another plan though. I sent Jeff and Susan in to start taking on all 4 of them at once. The second that either villager got low, I started to drag both of them out of the fight. This was a little bit cheap, but it was necessary to survive. I continued to drag Jeff and Susan from one side of the board all the way over to the other. This was to prevent the enemies from reaching them, and also, when they finally healed, I would be able to send them back in to continue attacking. Now that's exactly what we needed. We made it to the end of the night. That meant that we could finally eat and heal up. You know what that means? To war! I caught one of the skeletons lacking as it was further away from the rest of the monsters. The rabbits and cows actually did something good by hopping in between the monsters and my villagers. It wasn't long until the rest of the enemies joined in on the fight. The farm animals did their job, and it gave us just enough time to be able to take out one of the monsters right as the other 2 arrived. This made the fight a lot more fair, as it was now a 2v2. Oh, now a 2v1? And that's game. The enemies really thought they had us that time. Today was a pretty epic day. We had taken out all of the monsters, and now finally got our first logic and reason pack. It's time to crack this baby open. The first thing I got was a bush. That wasn't that exciting. The second, iron ore, which we haven't seen before. Another berry bush. And finally, an idea card for a farm. Now I'm going to assume that the farm grows things a lot quicker than the garden does. That has to be the case, right? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. We'll have to build one as soon as possible. Out of nowhere, another traveling cart had appeared. I wasn't able to trade with it last time, so I wonder why they decided to return. I once again gave it another attempt on trying to give it some items to see if it was willing to trade. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Well, looks like you're not going to get any of my money. Time to invest in some more card packs. I was really hoping that this Seeking Wisdom card pack was going to pull through and show the transport card up. And oh boy, was I wrong. It basically felt like I had gotten nothing. A new villager had been born into the village. I immediately had them become a militia member, as I wanted to make sure that they had some kind of role. Now talk about perfect timing. Another strange portal. 3 enemies had emerged. That meant that this was going to be an easy fight, because I now also had 3 villagers. Once everything was over, a bow had dropped. I had equipped it on one of the villagers, removing the blowpipe. They were no longer considered a militia unit. They were now an archer. I wasn't really able to see if the archer had less health than the militia man, because the archer was still damaged from the previous fight. I was encountering the same problem as earlier. The rabbits were annoying me, hopping around everywhere. I immediately took action and dealt with the problem. I already felt pretty guilty for harming these innocent rabbits. What made me feel even worse was that a rabbit hat had dropped after that one poor rabbit met its doom. Something pretty devastating happened. I had been informed that I was hoarding way too many cards. I had to get rid of 5 of them. I started eyeballing the idea cards in the top corner of the board. I wasn't sure if I would lose the instructions on how to build the ideas once I sold the card. So I sold only a few of those, ones that I knew that I already built, and then I got rid of some berry bushes for some reason. I honestly wasn't even sure why I made that decision, but what can you do? What's done is done. In the background, it looked like we were going to be getting a new villager soon. A baby was born and it was growing up super quick. We now were going to have 4 total villagers. The efficiency of this village was about to double. I could now have someone on the stone quarry and lumber camp all day long. That meant unlimited resources. It was time for the usual enemy attack. Only 2 monsters this time popped out of the portal. That was honestly an insult. The enemies really thought that they would be able to send over 2 troops and take out my villagers? They're a lot stronger than that. I did it. I could finally afford my very first Explorer's Pack. It only ended up costing me 20 coins. Now things weren't off to a good start. The second card ended up being this treasure chest that was trying to fight my villagers. So I went all in and had all 4 of them attack this chest. It held out for quite a while, and then when it was defeated, it had dropped a golden bar. I honestly had no idea what I could use these for, but I had one now. The last card in my Explorer's Pack ended up being the Plains. I was trying to figure out what I could do with these, and it appeared that I could have a villager go and explore them. After another card pack or 2, a mushroom had popped out of the plains. This was one of the findings that my villager had made while exploring. I wonder what else he's gonna find in there. I was really starting to save up some major food. Who would have thought that 3 carrot gardens would be OP? I still didn't even construct a farm yet. Things were definitely looking promising with food. While my villager was exploring the plains, a rat had popped out and started to attack him. I immediately sent my other villagers in to assist, and we had dealt with the problem pretty quickly. It appeared that I had finally unlocked the last type of card pack. I honestly wasn't going to focus on that right now though, because we were under attack. I ended up getting my troops ready and equipping them with all the right gear, and then sent them in to take on the enemies. Once again, there were only 3 of them, so this fight was over relatively quickly. We surprisingly did sustain some pretty decent injuries on our side though. Now, I can finally focus in on the new card pack order and structure. I kept pouring all of the gold coins that I got into this card pack. I better get something good out of this one, as I had to give up 25 coins just to get it. The 2 idea cards alone seemed like it was worth the pack. I had gotten a warehouse and a smelter. The warehouse increased my card capacity by a decent amount, and the smelter smelted down any ore that I put into it. Now those are 2 essentials for any village. I gathered 2 bricks, 2 flint, and a plank to immediately craft the smelter, as I wanted to get it up and running as soon as possible. Finally, I don't have to hold on to all of this iron ore anymore. We're about to get some iron ingots. We're also about to get some combat. This is going to be a rough one. I hope you guys are ready. A 4v4 had commenced. It seemed like both sides were pretty even. I honestly felt like I was a little bit outmatched. My villagers didn't hold up very well. I had to drag them out of there, and use the running around the board strat. After quite a while of running around, it was time to feed, and my villagers were back in the fight. The monsters didn't heal overnight, while my villagers did. The power of the battle had shifted sides. We were now coming out on top, and that's how we do it. I noticed that I was over my card limit, so I had someone start crafting a warehouse, and also another baby had been born to the village. I now was no longer over the card limit, and we were about to have a 5th villager. Things were going pretty smoothly. Since the order and structure card pack gave something pretty good last time, I decided to invest in another one. It seemed like you really couldn't get anything bad from these card packs. I ended up getting an animal pen, which can hold all of my animals in one area. This would prevent them hopping around all over the map. And I also had gotten a brickyard, which turns stone into bricks. We hadn't been able to utilize bricks that much, at least until now. This opened up the opportunity to build more powerful and stronger buildings. I had one of my villagers build a rowboat. Sadly, this wasn't going to be a huge ship that could hold a whole bunch of people on it, but we could at least fit one person, in case we needed to go explore into new lands. I checked in on our food situation to see how everything was going. Honestly, it was going a lot better than I expected. We were getting milk from the cows, some random mushrooms and onions from the plains, and then a whole bunch of carrots from the farms. Our food operation had now expanded from just milk and carrots to milk, carrots, onions, and sometimes mushrooms. It still didn't sound the best, but hey, we need to survive. In addition to bragging about the food system, our militia was also getting pretty powerful. Every time a portal would open up and 3 to 4 enemies came out of it, we were able to deal with them like a piece of cake. Even the random monsters that would appear out of the plains were no match for the militia. Something very weird was happening in the world. It seemed like the strange portals were appearing more often than they used to. The only thing is, it seemed like the same amount of enemies were coming into my world. I don't know what was happening, if it was some kind of magic or what, but there were definitely invasions happening a lot more frequently. It was actually pretty beneficial that there were more strange portals though. We were getting a lot more loot from the enemies when they would enter into our world and we would take care of them. There's always some kind of string attached though. I had 14 more cards than I could support, so I needed to build another warehouse, which we did pretty quickly. I now met the card capacity, but in a sense, we were suffering from success. This is really weird to think about, but since we were taking out all of the monsters that were coming our way, we created another issue by having a surplus of items. Even after building a brand new warehouse to hold my new cards, we had run into an overflow. There were 6 cards too many, and I had to decide which ones I was going to get rid of. My initial thought was to get rid of all of the resources that I could easily produce. Wood and stone and anything made of those 2 materials were my likely culprits. Sure enough, after handling the excess amount of cards, a strange portal had appeared. Who would have guessed? Things were at least a little bit more exciting this time, as 4 enemies had appeared from the portal. It wasn't 3. Even though this didn't really make things any harder, it was pretty cool to see a larger diversity of enemies. I also started to wonder, why did all of these random monsters want to attack us? We never did anything to them. I wonder if we were settling on their lands. One of them had also dropped a magic blade, which turned one of my villagers into a mage. This was pretty cool because we didn't really have any magic that was being utilized in the village. Now we do, I guess. I dragged the mage over while one of my villagers was attacking a rat. I wanted to see what they could do. Unfortunately, all I got to see was a regular attack. It wasn't anything special. I'm sure later on we could see what powers this mage truly possesses. It seemed like the village was approaching the max amount of items again, so I started cleaning out as many as I could. I had finally noticed that having the idea cards on my board didn't impact if we knew how to craft the actual item. I focused on sorting these cards out and getting rid of the ones that I had, and then just decided, well, why do I even need them in the first place? If we don't lose the item that you currently can craft from it, then why would I keep it? I ended up selling all of the idea cards as they took up a lot of space, and I didn't even need them in the first place. I honestly wish that I realized this a lot sooner. If I did, then I wouldn't have had to sell a lot of my resources and any cool cards that I didn't need at the moment. While swifting through the rest of the village, I had remembered that there was a rowboat. So I threw one of my villagers on there as I wanted to see what would happen. It looked like we would have to sail off to a brand new island, and I wouldn't be able to focus on any of the people that were currently in this village. I needed to make sure that everything was in tip-top shape before we headed out from this one. It made sense to tell the villager to get off the boat and wait until the time was right. I was saving up as many coins as I could as I wanted to buy more card packs. Quite a few of them had some ideas and technology that I hadn't experienced yet. Something we hadn't seen before had happened. A rare portal appeared. Usually we were used to seeing strange portals, but this time it was rare. There were 5 monsters that came out of the portal, and I only had 5 villagers. So this fight was very fair, as it was a 5v5. I noticed my mage putting in a lot of work and buffing the other villagers. Thank God that I had them, because it seemed like they were turning the tides of the battle. The only pitfall of a mage is that they have very low health. So I had to drag them outside of the battle as they got hit quite a few times and were very low on their HP. Ooh, a crossbow. Now that's gotta deal some good damage. I honestly figured that a crossbow would be dealing more damage than a bow would. So I equipped it on one of my soldiers and set the bow aside for when the baby in our village grows up. I became very frustrated. Another transport cart had entered into our village. It seemed like any attempt at all that I made to interact with them, they weren't interested. You know that they were carrying some good supplies, and I definitely wanted to get access to them, but I didn't know how. I guess that means no transported goods for us. Well, it looks like we might as well go back to pack opening. I started once again saving up as many coins as I could. I was just buying pack after pack and opening them up. The quicker that we would discover all of these new ideas and technology, the quicker our village would grow. It seemed like there was a strategically placed portal in order to attack our village. Right where all of the production goes on, a bunch of enemies emerged from a portal. They had completely disrupted the whole organization of our production area. It also seemed like there was quite a good amount of enemies. 5 once again. Thankfully, one of our villagers had grown up from being a baby and was now a mature villager. So, we were able to take on the enemies with a one-man advantage. Surprisingly enough, we didn't receive that good of loot from all of those enemies. We had gotten a gold bar from the chest and then a blowpipe from one of the other enemies. I was honestly expecting something a little bit better. Aw jeez, it's my biggest rival. After complaining about the transport cart and checking the organization of my farms and gardens, I had opened up another exploration card pack. From it, I had found the forest biome. I wasted no time at all and sent a villager over to start exploring it. I had a pretty good idea what we could get from a forest, because obviously there's just a lot of wood and sticks there. However, I'm sure there are some hidden gems. You never know what you're missing until you go out and see it. Looks like it's time for more card packs. I had found the recipe for a university quite a while ago, so I got all of the resources that I needed and had 3 villagers start constructing it. This was definitely going to be a place for innovation and creativity. It also meant that I could research new ideas. This would stop our village from having to rely on hopefully randomly one day coming up with them out of the blue. We could now research them and come up with them a whole lot quicker. It seemed like the enemies knew exactly what we were doing, and that we were trying to progress our society as fast as possible. So a portal had appeared and spit out some enemies who tried to attack my builders creating the university. This quick little invasion completely halted the building of the university, at least until we were able to resume it after the fight. Now that is a ton of carrots. It seemed like our village was doing really good on carrots and coins. So I started to create a chest to hold all of the golden coins that we had in excess. This was honestly such a good move because now I didn't have all of my golden coins vulnerable and sitting out in the middle of the open. No one would be able to steal them, and we now had them protected in this little chest. I then realized that I had enough materials to craft a magic wand. So that's exactly what I did. When I gave it to one of my villagers, they had turned into a wizard. I didn't know if a wizard was going to be a lot more powerful than a mage, but I guess we'll find out the next time we have to fight off some enemy monsters. Well, that opportunity came a lot quicker than expected. My mage and wizard were now fighting the enemies off. It seemed like the wizard functioned exactly how the mage did. I just didn't see it give any of the other villagers buffs though. That's the one thing that it was lacking. It seemed like its magical attacks were a little bit slower too, but did more damage. So, the moral of the story is that mages give buffs and deal light damage, while the wizards don't give any buffs, but they deal very high magical damage. After opening another exploration pack, I had unlocked the mountain biome. This was going to be a lot different than the forest and plains. I also decided that it was a good time to start selling my stockpile of resources in order to get a whole bunch of gold coins to invest into my new university building. It seemed like once we deposited 50 coins into the university, it output a new idea that we haven't had before. The researchers finished cooking up a new idea. What they came up with was a resource chest. I'm assuming that they got inspiration from the gold chest that I had created. With this new recipe in hand, I had gathered all of the resources necessary to create it. Right before we had finished crafting the resource chest, a rare portal had appeared. Once again, once we make a new advancement, the enemies just have to attack. It seemed like they were planning this. But honestly, this was an unlikely group of enemies to be hanging out together. I prepared my forces as the enemies had tried to charge us. We immediately engaged in combat. Our villagers outnumbered the enemies by 2, so things weren't that scary. I knew that we would be able to take out most of the enemies pretty quickly. Having a numbers advantage in a war always makes things a little bit more comfortable. And for this one, it definitely did, as we quickly took out the enemies and marched our way to victory. With everything going on, I had got distracted from my food sources. I didn't even realize it until now, but we had not been growing carrots at the constant rate that I was before. Our food stockpile was looking pretty light, and we didn't have enough food to survive for the next day. I immediately started selling stuff so I could buy a new cuisine pack just in case I needed to rely on that for last-minute food. I had also reorganized the farms and gardens to have all of the carrots that we needed. Luckily enough, by the end of the night, we were able to have just the right amount of food to be able to survive. With my whole food situation going out of control, I decided that it would be best to build another farm. Once it was complete, I had immediately thrown a carrot on it, and a bunch of enemies from a strange portal started to engage us. I'm sure you can predict what happened to them. Randomly, from one of the card packs, I had received a treasure chest. It looked like I needed some special key to open it, which I didn't have. So I just kind of set it aside and was hoping that I would be able to get the key soon enough in order to be able to open it. I also started withdrawing all of my resources from the resource chests that I crafted to hold them, and then sold the resources to get a whole bunch of coins. That allowed my university to start researching a completely new idea. What they came up with was a dustbin. This concept allowed our village to recycle any card that we didn't want. I honestly didn't understand the concept of this though, because why would I want to get rid of a card when I could just sell it? Good luck to you guys. This isn't going to end well in your favor. After fighting off quite a lot of enemies, I started to feed my villagers. There was this random stew that gave my villagers a boost. This was such a clever thing that I had never discovered up until this moment. If I provided my villagers with the extra nutrition that they needed, they would be able to work a little bit harder. The only thing is, I didn't know how to craft that stew, or at least I didn't have the resources to do it. Interestingly enough, my university had produced a resource magnet. I wasn't sure what this did at first, but apparently it does exactly what it sounds like it does. If you put a resource onto the magnet, then all other of those resources, or I guess you could say cards, would be attracted to that magnet. This was pretty cool, especially if you wanted to empty out a bunch of stuff from your chests. I then was informed that I was 12 cards over my card limit. I honestly should have noticed this and built another warehouse before it got this bad. But I was able to just take a whole bunch of my resources and sell them. This quickly freed up a whole bunch of space. While I was dealing with my resources and about to sell a whole bunch of them to get more gold coins, some enemies decided to invade. This time, there weren't that many of them, but they kept messing around with my resources, which was kind of annoying. So I immediately had turned my resources into gold, and then sent my troops out to go and fight. Light work as usual. After fighting off those enemies, I had realized that I didn't have a lot of food left over. I barely just had enough to feed every single villager in my village. For the next day, I was going to have to grow a lot more though. So I started to invest some money into the curious cuisine packs as I didn't want to risk any villager starving. This was honestly the right decision, because as the next night was approaching, I had a surplus of food ready for my villagers to eat. The carrots would not have been ready on time, so thankfully, I did the right thing. While managing the food was hard enough, the enemies had launched another invasion. There were quite a few of them, totaling up to be 6. After taking quite a few of them out, I had noticed that a bone staff had dropped. I really wasn't sure what this weapon could do, but it seemed very cool. After selling a whole bunch of resources to invest into my university, I had decided that it was finally time to sail off to the new island. My whole thought process on expanding was to send over one villager, as I didn't know how much food would be in the next location that we arrive at. I definitely considered sending over all of my villagers, but this just didn't seem feasible, and I thought that a couple villagers would starve if I did this. So we were off. My lonely archer had made it to an island. It seemed like this whole island was just made out of sand. This was a pretty nice change of scenery because I was so used to the grasslands. It appeared that there were some new card pack types that we haven't unlocked yet. I'm assuming that this island is going to have a lot of different resources. The first thing that I noticed was that a shell had come out of the first resource pack that I opened. This served as a currency of this new foreign island. I had also seen a banana tree that I could send my archer over and he would gather bananas from it. The card pack had also dropped some sand, driftwood, and seaweed. It appeared that the seaweed could be used as food, and the driftwood obviously was going to be used to get wood from. The sand, however, I had no idea what I could really do with it. I wondered if I maybe could turn it into glass or something. That would be cool. After selling some crafted resources for shells, I had unlocked a new card pack. It was called the Island of Ideas. I'm assuming that this pack is going to be very similar to the Seeking Wisdom pack back where our main village is. Once I got enough shells, I had bought in another On the Shores pack. I needed to make sure that I had enough food for the next day. This seemed like it was going to be a common trend, as I wanted to make sure that my archer could survive rather than just gaining some new knowledge from this random land. Jeff and Susan would be so proud if they knew what was going on right now. It's basically a repeat of their humble beginning. My plan for a temporary new economy on this island was to keep buying more of the On the Shore packs and getting as much wood as I could. This way, I could craft the wood into sticks or planks and end up selling those resources for a lot more than just a regular piece of wood. My strategy almost seemed like an infinite money glitch. When I finally had enough shells, I had purchased one of the new card packs. I had gotten the ideas of sandstone and a small chest. This seemed like it was going to be very useful. I then opened yet another card pack and had gotten the idea of rope and charcoal. I honestly didn't know what these resources could be used for besides the charcoal, as we had this in our last village, but it seemed like I would be able to utilize these resources to build a whole bunch of the same structures that existed on my previous island. I continued to grind the twig method, and it was really effective. I was able to keep opening up pack after pack. This allowed me to keep gaining more and more knowledge. After grinding all of these new card packs, I had unlocked a new card pack type. It was called Grilling and Brewing. This was pretty obvious that I was going to be able to barbecue a whole bunch of different fish and meats. The name had also entailed that we were going to be exposed to a couple new kind of beverages. I was pretty distracted with the new card type and crafting a bunch of stuff. I didn't realize that a pirate had snuck onto my island. I had sent my archer in to go and take care of the pirate as soon as possible. I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to be able to take him out, but my archer did his duties and got the job done. It seemed like this new island had not only exposed me to a whole bunch of new items and ideas, as well as resources, but it also had a surplus of new enemies that I was going to have to fight off. I can't wait to see what we learn on this island to bring back to our main village.